able to join us in person but has been following along online, or if it's your first time joining us, we have been on an amazing journey of reworking our minds, starting to watch some of our negative thought patterns and step outside of them. You could, if you haven't been able to listen yet, you could check in the digital library in bahir.org/videos. This is Aviva Barnett. Really, one of her projects in life has been helping people to rework some of our mind patterns. And she's the author of a very successful book called Riding the Wave. Riding the Wave. Yeah. So if you have never read it beforehand, great idea to check that out. So thank you for joining us tonight for part 3. You are greater than you think you are.
Thank you. Okay. 1 second. I just want to make it so that when your people are watching it, okay, there we go. Thanks so much. And I just really want to say I appreciate the opportunity, Shuli, that you brought me to meet your ladies. And this actually is incredible that I don't even have to leave my house. So I'm hoping that you guys like that idea too, that you don't have to leave your house. Okay. So for those who did not hear the other 2 talks, I will just give like a little 1-minute recap of what we're talking about, and this idea of that you're greater than you think you are. And the point that I've been trying to share with people is kind of giving them a sense that there's a paradigm with which how we look out at life, and most people are not visible to that paradigm. So what's the paradigm? Is that most people kind of get a feeling like life is coming at them, and that's what's creating their feelings. And we talked the last 2 times about how there's actually something going on internally within us. There's thoughts going through us that are creating feelings, and most people don't realize that what they're feeling in life is coming from the thinking that they bring to the table. And so when we say a statement like you're greater than you think you are, where I think most people get kind of tripped up is they have an opinion about themselves for whatever reason. Chances are they can look throughout their whole life and tell me that there's a lot of evidence that they have as to why they believe what they believe about themselves. Maybe they believe they're not good enough. Maybe they believe they're not kind enough, not giving enough. Maybe they believe they're uptight or type A personalities, or they're rigid, or they're controlling, or maybe they believe they're insecure or anxiety ridden. You know, maybe they believe they're just awesome and amazing and the greatest things and magnificent. You know, it doesn't have to be negative, but that sense of that people have a belief that what they think about themselves is really who they are. So what do I mean when I say you're greater than you think you are? Because what I've been trying to talk with everyone about is this idea that we are not our thinking. Thinking is something that we do. Thoughts are something that we have, but we're not our thinking. So whatever construct or opinion or belief or perspective, you know, it's kind of the same word describing the same thing, you know, whatever construct we have about ourselves is not necessarily the truth. I mean, it's for sure not the truth, because it's coming with a lot of judgments, habits of thoughts that we have, failed expectations, unfulfilled feelings, intense emotions. Like it comes from looking at our history, looking at our past, looking at our behaviors, looking at how we might, you know, we don't think our midos are good enough. Like we kind of can look and say we have all this evidence to prove why I'm not really being good enough. You take someone, let's say like I'm struggling with my parenting, and I feel like, oh my gosh, like I just lose my cool all the time. I'm always overwhelmed. I'm always stressed out. It's like it's chaotic, and everyone needs my time, and I don't even know where to put it. And there's this sense of like I'm blowing it all the time. So if someone comes into me and says, you know, they feel really insecure about their parenting, they're totally messing their kids up, like I can't, you know, they're gonna like need to go to therapy when they get older, like I've been in therapy, like I don't even know what to do about it. And there's this sense for me to kind of say to them, well, what if it's not true that you're not a good enough parent? It's kind of like, well, what do you mean? Look at all the evidence. Well, on Sunday, I yelled at them, and on Monday I got so angry I actually even potched them. I'm not a really big potcher, but like I even potched them, and they'll like have a list of things that they've done that are quote unquote, in their mind wrong. And so there's this sense of like, I have all this evidence. Now, what I want to point people towards is if I'm wearing a pair of glasses that already kind of predetermine, pre-state, kind of say that I'm not okay, like I'm messing up, I'm not enough, I'm not being taken care of, I feel insecure. Like if those are the glasses that I look out at life, then I don't realize that I actually innocently create this experience of not being good enough while I'm raising my kids with every interaction with my spouse or with a friend or with my mother-in-law. And this sense of not knowing that this bad feeling that I'm having is not coming from necessarily the behavior. It's not coming from what I'm saying is the truth. It's coming from the belief that I'm projecting onto what I'm seeing and now calling that the truth. Now, what if what I believed about myself wasn't necessarily true? Like, what if the thought I'm not good enough, or the thought of I'm not lovable, or I don't know, whatever thought a person could have that's like one of these deep feelings of just a belief. Like I don't really know if I believe that I can be unconditionally loved. That sense of like, well, what if the only thing that makes that true is my belief in that idea? Like, for instance, I had a client today, and she was struggling with feeling very vulnerable in a relationship. And, she's on the dating scene, and she has this friend, and she was feeling like she's very sensitive, and every time the friend doesn't really give her what she needs in the friendship, she is sensitive, she feels really hurt. And she was talking about, how they went out together, and she felt like she was being vulnerable, and she was expressing to her needs, and the friend couldn't really fill the need, and she was crying, and she was really upset. So we were talking about how there's a difference between, my question to her was, is it possible that you are wearing a pair of glasses that you have no visibility to, other than the fact that we're discussing it now, but that somehow you have these glasses of I'm sensitive and I get hurt? And I know that she has a lot of evidence that she can point to over her life from childhood up until now of how, when I was in third grade, this thing happened, and I was so sensitive, and I got so hurt, and it was really so painful. Or I had this friend when I was in high school, and then she dumped me, and it was so painful, and I was so hurt. And then this other thing happened when I went off to seminary, and this person like really did, like she did this thing, and she embarrassed me, and then she like dropped me, and I was really embarrassed, and I was really sensitive, and I was really hurt. So it looks like she's got all this evidence to prove, see, all these things happen to me in my life, and that's why I'm so sensitive, and that's why I get hurt. And I proposed to her, what if it's actually the opposite? What if somehow she's bringing to the table these glasses, I'm hurt and I'm sensitive, and that almost like the universe, the hashgacha that unfolds comes along to either prove to me that I'm really sensitive and getting hurt, or it kind of gives me the opportunity to be able to heal that belief about myself and drop it, to not keep buying into it and keeping it alive. That somehow that belief allows all these people to come into her life that quote unquote hurt her and make her feel sensitive. And it was very fascinating to kind of watch her wake up to, and I even prefaced it by saying, I want you to listen to this not through the hurt and sensitive glasses, because through hurt and sensitive glasses, what I'm saying might sound hurtful and insensitive, but to be open to, is it possible that somehow my thinking that I'm bringing to the table is making a space to be able to create that people are coming into my life and treating me in a certain way that I end up feeling like I get hurt and I'm sensitive all the time. And she also started to see that there was this a piece of her that was being vulnerable, and yet the vulnerability was really more being used in a manipulative kind of way, like maybe making someone feel guilty that they're not, listening to them or calling them or paying attention to them. And I was trying to describe how vulnerability is actually a beautiful piece of who we are when people are willing to be vulnerable, to be able to create intimacy and closeness and connection, whether I'm being vulnerable with a friend, with my spouse, with the Kadosh Baruch Hu, that it has the ability to create connection and intimacy. But if I'm using vulnerability in a manipulative way, then I'm actually going to create space where people are going to be distant and feel, and they're going to pick up that it's a little bit manipulative, and they're not going to really respond the way that I'm looking for. But what I'm talking about in terms of the thought content is, it doesn't look at all like I am living in thought about what it means to be vulnerable and having my needs met and being manipulative. And it doesn't look at all like that is creating the whole experience that I'm having, where I constantly am feeling disappointed and not getting the connections that I want. So I kind of invited her to have this idea of like thinking, what if, and greater than you think you are? What if you're more than sensitivity and being hurt? What if that's not what you were bringing to the table, and there was the ability to allow yourself to be vulnerable without, not through the lens of being hurt and sensitive, where you feel like you have to like get something out of it, but
she's in the shower.
Being able to like be, hold on, I'm just gonna, sorry. But being able to like be sensitive to having to where I lost my train of thought because I was trying to mute something. But so this idea of just being able to see how much am I bringing to the table. So that was just an example. You could have another situation where somebody has this like sense of being, I don't know if anyone can relate to this, like being too controlling, or being too, there are a lot of people who are dating, let's say, and you'll hear comments from people like, you're being so picky, you're being so, uptight about things, or you're not letting things flow, or you're being too controlling about things. And this sense of, I can start buying into what other people think about me, and I can start getting caught up in choosing things, doing things, behaving in ways because I'm worried, what are people going to think of me? And I could end up showing up in a certain way that isn't necessarily me, but I buy into thinking that it's me, or I buy into thinking I need to be this way because this is what people expect of me. And then I end up limiting who I am and how I am, and am not able to break out of it. So this idea of like someone walking around with like, maybe I am a little bit controlling, or maybe actually what I really see more often is that people are controlling and they don't realize that they're being controlling. And so they kind of get a sense of people don't respond to them, or they're not getting people to react in the way that they would want, because in the end of the day, nobody wants to be controlled, whether it's your spouse or it's your kids or it's your friends. Like, nobody wants to be controlled. And where I see people get stuck is they have this thinking that they live in, and they're not aware of it. So underneath, if you think about it, what is underneath control? What's underneath controlling behavior? The truth is, like, all control is based in fear. There's some sort of fear. There's something that I'm afraid of. There's something that I'm not able to express. There's something that I feel the need to like kind of protect. So whether it's protecting myself from feeling that I'm good enough, feeling someone's going to take care of me, feeling like I can put myself out there and be vulnerable, whatever you want to call that. But people start getting, kind of doing behaviors that end up being a little bit controlling. And then they have people who kind of distance themselves or get defensive or say not nice things. And then they can buy into this thinking like, oh yeah, but see, like, I'm just controlling. I'm just, this uptight person. And so my question is, how much that I'm bringing to the table is coming from my own thinking and beliefs that I don't necessarily have visibility to. Like I'll give you an example. I'll give you an example. So I've been kind of waking up to lately. Someone gave me this book to read, The Empowered Wife, and it's like been my new thing. I'm really into it. And a big piece of what it's talking about is trying to create intimacy. So one of the things she says to create intimacy is to stop being controlling. Like you can't control your husband. And so a piece of that is helping you wake up to how many things you say in the course of a day, that ends up being very controlling. And so I've been noticing I have this situation with one of my kids, and my husband needed to make a bunch of phone calls in order to deal with the situation. And I was stuck in this space of feeling really anxious about urgent, about I kind of want you to take care of this now. And yet I'm also in this space of I don't want to be controlling because I want to be creating intimacy. And that when you get controlling, he gets defensive. So I've been trying to figure out, well, how do I get you to make the phone calls that need to be made in a timely manner without coming across very controlling? And what I found fascinating, because she says this whole thing is like underneath all control is fear. I found fascinating. I was trying to figure out what am I afraid of? And it kind of hit me, this sense of, for some reason, I brought into a belief that it's all on me to figure out this problem with my son. It's all on me. I got to figure it out. And there was this sense of I'm in it alone. There's an insecurity. There's I'm not going to be taken care of because I don't know if I can handle this on my own. And so I was creating this anxiety, which really, in all honesty, was like a distraction from the fear of feeling like, oh my gosh, I'm in this alone. I'm all on my own, even though obviously my husband's there, but somehow I bought into this feeling like it's all on me. And there was this sense of oh my gosh, I'm living with this anxious feeling. And it wasn't looking to me like the anxious feeling was coming from thought in the moment inside of me. It was kind of looking like it was coming from this really serious situation and the fact that my husband needs to make all these phone calls and he's not really taking care of it yet. And so what I found fascinating about the whole control thing was how many times it kept coming up wanting to say oh, did you make the call yet? Or can you let me know when you're going to make that call? Or in a roundabout way, trying to be when you make that call, would you mind asking this question? It was kind of another way of trying to control, but trying to sound nice about being controlling. And it has just been, wow, I do that all the time, because there's this sense of living in this illusion that somehow my controlling other people, my husband, my kids, whatever it might be, somehow gives me this sense of security. And it is a total fallacy. It's a total illusion. And I was living in this limited sense of thinking I had a certain amount of control and not realizing that was actually, it actually limits you. It limits you because it's such an illusion. So I finally had this experience where I was wow, I'm in all this anxiety and I don't want to be controlling. So I just want to kind of be able to acknowledge, oh, wait a minute. This is just a thought created experience that's coming because I have a pair of glasses that I'm looking out at life, that I need things to go my way. I need things to be in the known. I need to know what's going to happen with my son now. I don't know if you could relate to that kind of it would just have this sense of oh my gosh, being in this uncertainty and in this unknown was creating all this anxiety. And I didn't recognize that there was thought I was believing in of whether I believed not knowing, was not okay, or I believed not knowing meant I wasn't going to be okay. I'm not even 100% sure what was under it. But I had this moment where I expressed to my husband, I'm not trying to control you and I don't need to fix it. I just am expressing, wow, the anxiety feels so intense being in this unknown space of not knowing how it's going to turn out. And somehow in just acknowledging it, like acknowledging it that it was coming from within me, it was some glasses I was wearing, and that was continuing to create that this scenario that I was in brought all this anxiety. And I found it fascinating. Once I acknowledged it, this happened the other day, once I acknowledged it, it's like I've been totally okay. And the phone calls haven't been made yet. And I just watched the wave of like feeling intense about it and then being like, oh, it's okay, it's okay. So in the past, I would have kind of been with, well, if you don't make this happen, it's not going to happen. And now I'm realizing that trying to do that actually kind of kills our intimacy. So I'm not interested in that anymore. And I'm not interested in buying into the thinking that I buy into that makes me feel insecure and out of control, and allow myself to like let that insecurity kind of kill the intimacy. I hope I'm being clear on trying to say that. If I'm not, you can totally be like sending me questions in your little chat thing to clarify or anything, because I can't really see anyone's faces because there aren't.
I have a question.
Yeah, please.
I unmuted myself. I just wanted to ask about something you said earlier about an example. You actually brought up another week something similar to this about the parent who is out of control, meaning who does have a temper. And it's not just an illusion she made in her mind, but if you look at her behaviors, she really has, she has a temper problem. So how do you balance that? It's not just a thought, it's not an illusion, which, and the empirical data that she's behaviors.
Okay, so just so I'm clear, what's the actual question that you're asking in terms of, okay, so technically there is somebody and they have a temper.
So
what do you do? Like, I'm just asking, is the question like, what do you do with the temper? Or is the question, how is that?
Not just a thought. Her thought isn't an illusion. Her thought isn't the glasses that she now sees through, that I'm someone with a temper. That is an additional layer, but she actually, unequivocally has a temper.
Okay, but you're asking, what does her thought have to do with having the temper? I'm just trying to understand I just want to be answering the question you're asking.
Meaning
it's the question of, okay, she has a temper and she shouldn't have a temper, and how do you fix that?
No, meaning the thought isn't, the thought is accurate, and it's not like she's just seeing things through those glasses. Perhaps she's compounding it by now viewing herself as somebody with a temper, but it's not like she's just strongly convincing herself of that. She has, she screams at her kids.
Okay, so I guess the question I would have is, when I say like there's thinking that she has under that she's buying into, the glasses that she's looking at, she's bringing something to the table. The anger, like the control I was describing before, right? It's what's the word? I want to say it's a distraction. I know that might not sound so, it might sound like an excuse. I'm not really sure, but like, meaning it's a distraction from something deeper that she's feeling, that she's clearly not aware of, but she's in some sort of angst. And the anger, I just can even relate to myself. When I get angry at my kids, or I feel that feeling come up, that sense of there's something going on that I'm buying into, that I'm believing, that I'm viewing a large time. It's kind of like wanting things to go my way and getting angry when they're not going my way. And underneath, so again, the anger usually is coming along with some sort of like need to control. It's not going my way. I'm trying to control it. And the anger is like a response to not being able to make it go that way. And there's something underneath that anger, which is what I'm pointing to, or I'm trying to point to, which is this sense of somehow feeling I don't know if you want to call it an existential insecurity, or there's something going on of feeling I don't know whether it's I'm not good enough or I'm not worthy, or there's some fear of not feeling like I'm being held or I can handle this chaos, or there's some, so I guess the base word I would say is there's some insecurity the person is in that is coming from some belief that I have about myself that I believe is true. The insecurity is creating a feeling of kind of like not being okay. So whether it's I'm not okay with uncertainty or unknown, whether I'm not okay with I'm not okay with not getting my way. I'm not okay with the feeling of out of control, because it kind of gives me a sense of, again, going back to I'm lacking some sense of security. There's a fear under there that I'm not aware of. And I feel like the anger is just an expression of a deeper fear. And it's a lot easier to focus on other people than it is to focus on your own feeling, your own fear that might be coming up. It's a lot easier to blame my kids and get mad and express it that way than it is to kind of own up. Just like for me, it's a lot easier for me to get controlling of my husband than it is to kind of acknowledge, wow, there's like a fear of like somehow this is going to all fall on me, or it's my responsibility and I can't handle it myself, or feeling like Hashem's not with me, or whatever it might be, so I guess what I'm saying is I'm not condoning getting controlling. I'm not condoning being angry and having a temper. But what I am saying is that focusing in the direction of thinking the anger is the problem or the behavior is the problem, to me, is not going to ever get her to a place where she will actually be able to stop those behaviors, until there's some visibility to being able to get okay with living in the, that angst feeling of insecurity, until someone can kind of realize like, wow, I live in a lot of thought that is telling me something that makes me not feel so good about myself, or makes me feel ashamed, or makes me feel vulnerable, and I think that's a problem. Until I can kind of see like, oh, that's all thought created, and it's not necessarily a problem. It's not necessarily true. I'm actually bigger than my temper. I'm bigger than these insecurities. There's something more going on. Until you can kind of get in touch with the health underneath that, I just don't know if I see the behaviors changing so much. I mean, I get people could do some behavior programs, and people could do some, okay, if you're yelling 10 times, try to make it 9. Like, I'm not saying there aren't things that you might want to try to do, but I'm just saying the underlying core issue, in my opinion, is not going to be about focusing on the behavior. Because all I think is that the more you focus on that anger, temper, behavior, the more the person feels shamed. And shame will never change behavior, no matter how much you do it. Judgment will never change behavior, because it's just another form of shame, no matter how much you do it. So, you can keep doing that. You can keep beating yourself up. You can keep beating yourself up. And and my point is that we'll have a lot of evidence. If I have this belief about myself, I'll have a lot of evidence to prove the belief is true. Look at all, and then I'll have more to beat myself up about. And so my question is, how do you help someone break out of maybe the opinion and belief they have about themselves, though they might have a lot of good reasons why they've had it? Because look, I've been yelling at my kids for the last 10 years, and my oldest is 10. Like, there might be a lot of proof to it. But if you can help someone see that was just some form it took, and I bought into it, and what if I didn't have to hold on to that? What if it didn't have to necessarily be the truth? If I could get beyond it, if I could blow out that construct, would something else show up? Would something else be more available? Would I heal that fear or that insecurity in a way that the behaviors would actually start to dissipate? Am I making any sense?
Yeah, we're all just on mute.
Okay, no, but I'm saying, but did I answer your question? Because I feel like it did come up last time also.
Yeah.
And I don't want to give this impression like, oh, there's nothing to do, so to speak, or you just have to deal with the angry behavior. I guess I'm just trying to point to there's something underneath the behavior that I want to help someone be able to see. And if I don't get beyond seeing I'm not who I think I am, if I can't see the truth of that, no matter what my issue is, I don't know that someone's going to be able to get past their habit of what they're doing, because the habit is, it's like being on a hamster wheel. It's like it's self-perpetuating because of the thinking and the glasses I'm wearing that I'm bringing to the table. So if I kind of believe I'm a bad mother, if I kind of believe I'm a bad person, so then I wake up the next morning and I just kind of redo the Groundhog's Day, like just keep redoing it, and wondering why nothing's changing. And it doesn't necessarily appear like that my beliefs and my thoughts and my decisions I made about myself have anything to do with it. I kind of just think, no, I'm just objectively observing that, look, I have a temper problem, rather than somehow there's something I'm bringing to the table that's not working here. There's some belief I have. I mean, I don't know if you can relate to this, like this sense of like, when you say about anger, the big one that comes to me is like, how many people get caught up in like, I need it to be my way. Like, I need it to be my way. As much as people want to say like, oh, I can be so flexible. And like with these little things that come up, it's like, no, it needs to be my way. I mean, you're driving and you give your husband, like, well, turn left and he's turning right. Like, well, like, no, but like, I'll get us there faster, or you want your kids to like clean up their room and you want them to do it in the way you want to do it, or you want them to do the homework at the time that you want them to do it, or you want to leave when you want to leave, like that sense of like, how many of us live in this sense of urgency or wanting it my way, and thinking that the feeling of anxiousness or frustration or annoyance that we're living in is because our kids or our spouse or our friends are not doing what we want. Like, it's because of their behaviors that I'm feeling this way. So I kind of want to point people back to, and the main reason that I want to point people back to where it's truly coming from is because I feel otherwise the only place I have to go is to victimhood. Like, I'm a victim of my kids' behavior, and that's why I get angry all the time. If they would just behave, or they would just listen, or they wouldn't be so chutzpahdik, I wouldn't be angry. If my husband would just do what I need, like, I wouldn't be angry. So it kind of falls into, my hands get thrown up because I can't do anything about it. To me, when I can own, wow, that somehow I'm creating this experience and I just didn't even realize it, there's a empowerment to that when someone sees that. Not a, oh my gosh, another thing I have to do, or oh my gosh, now it's my fault, I'm going to blame myself. But like an empowerment of, wow, Hashem, can you help me see beyond what I'm seeing about myself? Can you help me see that this isn't the truth of who I am, that you created me so much more, and I'm just kind of limiting it because of the constructs I have about myself, and they're not necessarily the truth. Can you help me see beyond that? Like with this woman I said at the beginning, like I just said, like to ask Hashem to help you see beyond the glasses of being hurt and sensitive, that it's almost like you don't even, it's like a blind person coming and being able to see. You don't even know what you're going to see because you have no idea what it would look like to see the world through different glasses. And the only answer I have to that is like to daven to Hakadosh Baruch Hu, like he's the one who's going to give you revelation to help reveal to you what there is to see beyond what you're already blocked to seeing. But it is just helpful because at least I point in this direction instead of out there trying to fix or control everyone else. So to me, when someone starts owning that, I find there's that ability for some of the anger behaviors or controlling behaviors or whatever habits people have to sort of have a chance to kind of fall away or lessen or at least take ownership of and take responsibility for. Yeah, so I'm hoping that I answered your question. So I know that most of you are on mute, but I am going to pause for a few moments to just kind of see where you're at and what questions you might have. So I go in the direction that will be helpful. See, I can't even see people to see whether they're like even getting what I'm saying. But I appreciate the question because it kind of helps make it a little bit more tangible.
I'm just curious, what are some other very classic examples of the underlying thought pattern that you see aside from it needs to go my way, or I'm sensitive, or wanting to be in control? You're going to be doomed. What are some of the other major things?
So I do think a big core one, kind of underlying most people's, is I'm not good enough. So in whatever realm you're going to say that, I'm not good enough at chesed, I'm not good enough at cooking, I'm not good enough at having guests, I'm not a good enough mom, I'm not a good enough wife, I'm not sensitive enough, I'm not giving it, that kind of seems to be a major underlying one. Again, how do you help someone see past that? That's not necessarily true. It's just a belief that you have about yourself, and all the evidence you want to look at to prove it is, I always say, it's like inadmissible in a court of law because it's coming through the lens that you're looking at. If someone else could see you, or you could see yourself from a different perspective or a different vantage point, you might see it completely differently, and then you wouldn't necessarily have that feeling. Along with not being good enough, is like not deserving. Now, I don't think a lot of people say that straight out. I don't know if a lot of people are, not that, I mean, a lot, especially people you're dealing with, we are very self-aware, sometimes to a fault. But I don't know that someone would say I'm not deserving. But if you listen to the anxiety or the fears that are kind of underneath what's going on for them, it's funny. I just started giving this class about these intimacy skills, and the first thing she talks about is self-care. And it was just so interesting how everyone was fine. Like, everyone had excuses for like why they couldn't do self-care, or why there wasn't enough time for self-care, or almost like, I don't have time for it, so can I turn something that isn't really gonna fit into it into self-care? And it said, like, the self-care has to be something that you enjoy doing in the moment, not like something after the fact, but while you're doing it to give yourself some self-care. And I found it was fascinating. What came up a lot is this sense of, well, I don't really deserve it. I'm not saying they would come out and say that, but the fact that someone's not willing to do something to take care of themselves, it's like, yes, we all know theoretically, yeah, you're in the airline, you're in the plane going down, put on your oxygen mask before somebody else's. But we live in our world that's like, but we don't do that. We're always taking care of everybody else but ourselves. And it always seemed to me like self-care was like a nice luxury if you had the time, but who really has the time for it? And what I've been noticing in my older age is, it's not a luxury, it's a total necessity, because for so many reasons, but that sense of, unless I'm taking care of myself, I'm not really good enough for my kids. And unless I'm taking care of myself, I'm not happy enough for my husband to even want to be available, to want to give to me and create intimacy. So that sense of, like, it's phenomenal. It's fascinating to me how many people live with, I'm not deserving. Now, you can call that a lot of other things, kind of, people will say they have low self-esteem because they don't think they're worth it. I'm not worth the time. I'm not worth spending the money on. I'm not worth being taken care of. I guess those are just other ways of kind of saying the same thing. And so the question is, if that is a belief that I have, whether I have it because of something that happened in my childhood, or I have it because of the way somebody's treating me now, but if it's a belief that I have, I will end up living my life projecting that belief into the world. Hashem will allow the hashgacha to unfold, to allow people to come into my life to either promote and prove that belief, or to help me heal it, because it's not true. Like, obviously, Hashem didn't create, like, I don't have to be deserving. I have self-worth just by definition of the fact that Hashem created me. Like, so it's for sure not true. But yet the fact that I believe it allows it to keep it alive. So the fact that I'm kind of projecting it into the world, and then again, I come back to like, but look at all the proof I have that I really am not worth it. Like, look at how this person treats me, or look at how my kid treats me, or look at how I messed that up, or I made that mistake, or see what that person thinks about me. Like, it just perpetuates itself. So there's this sense again of like, like, you know, if you could like shout from the rooftops, how do you help everyone see that, you know what, it's the most human thing in the world to not feel good enough. I don't think there's a human on the planet that doesn't have an area where they feel like I'm not good enough, or I don't feel deserving, or I question whether Hashem loves me. You know, like, I know he loves me, but like, does he really love me? You know, like, you know, that sense of like, I know he loves me, but like, does he unconditionally love me? You know, like, well, I don't know. That's kind of a big, tall order. Does he unconditionally? Do I believe that he unconditionally loves me? I mean, I want to unconditionally love my kids. I kind of wonder, did I feel unconditional love as a kid? Do I give my kids unconditional love? You know, like, do they even feel that? Well, you know, when I kind of want to get my way, or I'm getting angry or whatever, like, there's a lot of ways that they could end up feeling like my love seems conditional, even though in my heart, I feel like I know it's not. But I could have that sense of like, wow, well, if I'm not, here's another one that comes up for people. Like, if I'm not perfect, then maybe he won't unconditionally love me. If I'm not perfect, maybe other people won't, you know, so we can kind of like take on these beliefs and don't even see that they are kind of manifestations of this deeper feeling or a deeper fear, you know, like, you know, what if I wasn't loved, you know, so I need to be a certain person in the world and show up in a certain way. And that also can be a construct that can limit somebody. I mean, some of our constructs can be really productive and helpful. You know, you take that overachiever, you know, like that type A personality that like can do everything. Like, it's great, it's really helpful, but it could limit them in life from a sense of, I'm still locked into it needing to be a certain way. And is it possible to see that I'm much bigger than anything I could ever think about myself? Just like we say, like, Hashem loves you more than you could ever love any of your kids all together. We are so much greater than we think we are. And we get caught in our own limited beliefs about ourselves. And, you know, what are other beliefs that come up for people? I don't know. Can anyone think of any that I haven't said? Where do we go with these thoughts and fears? Thank you for the question. Where do we go with these thoughts and fears? Well, I guess my first reaction wants to be like, what if we don't have to go anywhere? Meaning, what if we understood, I think we spoke about this in the first class, but what if we understood where thought and feeling came from, and that it's sort of an experience going through us, then that my opportunity in life is to kind of be able to just experience thoughts, feelings, fears, rather than feeling like there's something I have to deal with. So I don't even know if it's necessarily something that I need to fix, other than it's just helpful to know that somehow I might be contributing to my own experience in a way that's not so helpful. So I don't know that I have to do anything with them or I have to go anywhere with them. But what I do know is that when people start waking up to the truth of these constructs, I think in the face of the truth that constructs are just made up of thought, and thought is not necessarily anything concrete or real, there is a sense of they tend to fall away. When I kind of own my experiences coming through me instead of at me, and I wake up to that it's thought creating the experience, it tends to fall away. You know, like this experience I was describing of like I was having so much anxiety this morning or yesterday, whenever it was, you know, about like making the phone calls. Like, so if I were just like, where do I have to go with that anxiety? So I think what was the most helpful for me in the past, I would have probably been like, I got to get rid of this anxiety. And because I had a belief I had to get rid of this anxiety, that's why I would start controlling my husband. So what was new for me was this sense of, I just got to experience the anxiety and realize, let me just own it. Like, okay, I'm owning that I'm in an anxious experience because there's a really big unknown here, and I don't really love being in the unknown. But as long as I kind of don't think it's too much of a problem and it just is an experience, I got to experience it. And it was fascinating because within a very short period of time, I was like on to the next thing and kind of forgot about it, forgot about him having to call. The anxiety kind of went away because I was on to something new. And then maybe later when I was thinking about it, maybe the anxiety came back. But that sense of like, I just get to experience it, but I don't have to do anything with it. And somehow I feel that the system is designed, we're designed to be able to handle all thought and feeling, and it's meant to flow. So when I just let myself be in an experience rather than having to deal with it, I tend to find it flows. It does something. I get to be aware. Maybe there's a message for me to hear here, but I don't have to make drama out of it. Is that okay? Okay, I'm not sure what I said, but I'm glad you like the answer. Any other questions that people have? Is there anything else you want me to address or say?
How long do you often find that with the people you work with, it takes for them to really uproot, to hammer away at some of these thought processes?
So I do feel it is definitely individual, but I don't believe it's one of these like forever processes. You know, I believe like if someone kind of looks in this direction for a few months, I think at a certain point they end up realizing I don't have to hammer through every single thought process or every single habit that I have. I think they start noticing there's just an overall system of how it sort of works. And I find the goal is not to change or get rid of the habits. It's more to understand them. And when I have an understanding of how it's working and the system's working, I just think people become more resilient at handling life and handling their experience and their feelings, not thinking it's so much of a problem, not feeling like I have to get out of it. I mean, we're human. We always want to get out of discomfort. But the fact that I can kind of embrace discomfort today in a totally different way than I ever did before allows me to just be able to be there. You know, like I mentioned, like something's going on with my son, and a sense of like in the past, it would have been like drama, 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 drama. And I feel like, yes, I am getting hit with uncomfortable. I am getting hit with unknown. I am getting hit with like, wow, what does this mean? But yet I'm allowing it to kind of come in, have the experience, do what it does, and then let it kind of flow through. And I feel it allows me to, I mean, I can't say calm because anyone, like I'm not a calm person, but to be more flowing, to be more, responsive is not the word, resilient is really the word that comes to, you know, that ability to like, okay, we can handle this. We can handle this. It's another thing. Like we can, like, I don't have to make this mean too much. I don't have to make too much drama out of it. I can handle unknown and uncomfortable. I wouldn't choose it. I wouldn't sign up for it, but I'm not in this fight. Like, Hashem, you woke up this morning and you must have gotten this script wrong. Like, this must have been my neighbor's script. I was not the one like signing up for this one. Certainly not this doozy, you know? Whereas now there's not this constant fight of like, it shouldn't be this way. It shouldn't be this way. There's a sense of like, wow, I can handle anything because I am so clear that, I think I said this maybe the first class, you know, that I have a colleague who says the definition of suffering is wanting to be someplace I'm not. And I find this sense of being able to be really embracing and accepting of wherever I am, even if it's anxious and even if it's uncomfortable, allows me to ride it. You know, that's like where that whole ride the wave comes from, like just being able to ride it. I don't have to change it. I don't have to make it different. I just have to know that I have the capacity and I'm okay no matter what to be able to ride it. Okay. But let's say it's something bigger than just making a phone call, figuring out a situation. For example, anxiety about going into labor for the first time. One should just be with that discomfort and be resilient. And it's not something bad from Hashem. It's just a good situation that is causing such anxiety. Okay, so are you asking the question or stating it? Because it seems like a question, and I want to say that in your question, you answered yourself, because I think you're right. When just being okay to be in the discomfort and be resilient. So what are you pointing to? You're pointing to that there can be fear around going into labor. And sure, fear is the most human experience that everyone has. And I may or may not be getting out of it, but can I be okay having the experience? Because we mentioned the first time the idea that thought, any feeling I ever had has to be coming from within me, coming from, we call it thought in the moment, but that it a thought of Hashem is putting me in a good situation, even though it's causing anxiety, right? There's a sense of my experience is coming through me, and I can be anxious, and I can also, maybe let me say it a different way. When I fight the anxiety and try and either be upset with myself, I shouldn't be anxious, this is a good thing, why am I feeling anxious? Or I try to fight the anxiety or try to do something to get rid of the anxiety, which is another form of fighting it, I find it ends up becoming more intense and staying around a lot longer. If I accept anxiety as part of the human experience, it's coming through me, I'm having a thought, I'm afraid of the pain, I'm afraid of what might happen, I'm afraid of whatever it could be, and I allow myself to just be in the experience of that, what I find, and I'm only inviting you to experiment with it, because I just find anyone I've invited to experiment finds this to be true too. When I let myself just have the experience flow through me, it passes much more quickly. And I'm not saying it in a way like, oh, I have to wait for it to just be over for it to pass, but I just get to be in an experience. And at some point, I'll notice I'm in a different experience, even for the good, but versus fighting it. So I find over time, the anxiety just kind of does its thing a lot faster, kind of runs its course a lot faster. Does that make any sense? I just want to make sure I answered your question properly. Okay, thank you. Glad I did. And it's not, you're right, because it's not just like sometimes there's a small incident and sometimes it's a big incident, but it's the same thing, because you can't even put a label on what's small and what's big, because Lamaisa, for every human being, what's going on for them is big, and so to be able to say oh no, this is a big event, this is a trauma, this is a big thing, this thing is like a little thing, but you know what? There are some people who have little things and they get a tremendous amount of anxiety attacks about them, and other people who have really big things and they just handle them so calmly and resiliently. So I don't think you can judge yourself or anyone else for why they have the reactions or experiences that they do, but there's definitely something about allowing yourself to be in it and bringing Hashem into the picture. I love how you said that. It is ultimately from Hashem. It's all from Hashem. If I was really clear that every experience I was ever having was always lovingly being handed to me from Hashem, I'd have no problem doing anxiety. We just get caught up in oh my gosh, somehow he's not in this picture and I got to handle this one all by myself and this one's a doozy, but ultimately if I really got I don't know why Hashem wants me feeling anxious right now, but I guess it's part of the experience, the human experience he wants me having right now. That would definitely take a huge load off of things. And that is always the truth. That comes back to we get limited only by the thinking we have in our mind. If we were able to get beyond some of that, we'd break out and be so much greater on so many levels in our relationships, in our amuna, in our feeling Hashem's love. We'd be able to break out of all of that and feel it much more than we do if we weren't holding on to our limited views. Okay. Any other questions? I see, I think our time is up, but the floor is yours, Julie.
I guess I'll just share one of these thought patterns that it took me a while to recognize in myself. I mean, aside from some of the other classics, something that I had in my head since I was young was, once I internalized it, like life has a purpose, and we all have a larger mission in life. Um, that set in very deeply into my head was that there's a larger purpose, larger purpose. I saw that so clearly that I was never able to be there because it's a life process. So a thought that went in very deeply was, you aren't where you're supposed to be. There's somewhere where you're supposed to be. And I found as I got older that that really permeated through so many different areas of my life. It wasn't where I was supposed to be. And so therefore I'm doing something which is great with my children or my husband, or if I'm somewhere, but I'm not present, which obviously our generation struggles with being present, but I'm saying I found that mine was much more existential. You're not where you're supposed to be because you're not going to be there, because you're not ever going to be there, because it's a lifelong process. And this, obviously, so many other thoughts are an extension of this, like you're falling short or you're not, I don't know, not deserving, but you're not worthy, but there's something that's missing. There's something that's missing. Oh, because there's always will be something that's missing because you're not where you're supposed to be. And once I was able to identify that and not, obviously constantly working on not fighting it, like you're describing the secondary step, which is writing it, not fighting it. I was, something that I have really worked on and continue to work on. Like, oh, Shavisi Hashem L'Nagdi, like, oh, being where you are. Hashem is with me, where I am, and I'm where I'm supposed to be. And I think that, like, so many times, it's something very subtle, and often it couches itself in something like spiritual, very lofty in that way. But at the end of the day, it's a very unhealthy thought pattern that really, really has detracted from many areas, and I really, really relate to what you said, like to what the big nakuda that you made earlier and you've been making, is that itself was designed by Hashem. Hashem made that experience go through me because he wanted me perhaps to work on in life of, being present and finding him where I am, finding him through the presence in life, present and presence, his presence in life in the present. But it really, thank you very much. It really, really resonates with me when you say that itself was designed by him, and that's something that goes through you.
And I love that example that you're giving about that being a thought process that somebody could have about, like, I'm supposed to be someplace else. I'm supposed to be someplace else. There's something else I'm supposed to be doing. There's something like, that's that whole, like, it shouldn't be this way. It shouldn't be this way. I'm not supposed to be getting angry. I'm supposed to be farther along. I'm supposed to be married. I'm supposed to have more kids. I'm supposed to be more laid back. It's never ending. And it doesn't look to people like that is thought, that's a thought creation. It doesn't look like thought has anything to do with that experience of not being enough, not having enough, not doing enough. So I love that you're saying that, because that is a definite way it shows up in its verbiage of, like, but I'm supposed to be there. I'm supposed to be here. I'm not supposed to be where I am. I'm not supposed to be this heavy. I'm not supposed to be this, that. I'm not, like, you could fill in the blank for anything. And it just looks like I'm objectively observing the truth. And it doesn't look at all like thought is somehow creating this existential experience of not being happy with where I am. And like you said, but when I wake up to, like, even that is all from Hashem for sure, but that sense of, like, wow, if I weren't buying that, if I weren't believing that, I actually would just be present. So I love that that's the last example that you gave. And I'll just throw out there, like, that people are totally welcome to contact me or check out my website, avivabarnett.com. Or contact me through Shuli, or look me up. But I'm happy to answer any and all questions that you have. And it really was an honor and a pleasure to be with you for these past few weeks, and I really appreciate the opportunity.
Thank you so much, Mrs. Barnett. I think we've all really, really gained. If you have just joined in now, feel free to look at parts one and parts two. And thank you, Mrs. Barnett, for making yourself so available. I think that, please God, we really will feel the trickle effects of what you've helped us to rewire or not rewire the start of ride. And Hashem should help, Hashem should bless you. You should have so many ripple effects of your, of what you've put into place. You should be able to see those, the fruits of your labor also clearly.
Um,
So
Thank
much.